Virtual curriculum night, everybody. I'm here. I will let teachers introduce themselves as we get to their slides. But we are the high school team, and here's a little bit about what we do. You're up first, Miss Snyder.
All right. So Earth Sciences for freshmen, we're going to spend this summer talking about planet-based resources, including renewable and non-renewable energies. And semester 2, we start focusing on not only Earth's role in the solar system, but also the universe as a whole, and then also concluding with weather and atmospheric disruptions. And as we go through all 11 units, we'll be focusing on the impact of humans on each of the individual systems we're studying. With sophomores, we go through biology, and semester 1 is all about cells and the chemistry of cells. And we accumulate the semester with ecology, and then second semester we focus on genetics, heredity, and evolution. And with juniors, we go through chemistry. Semester 1, we focus on the periodic table and learning all about atoms and how they act individually, with focus on quantum numbers. And semester 2, we learn how atoms interact with each other with a focus on stoichiometry. And my 2 electives this year are forensic science in the fall and health in the spring.
Awesome. Mr. Kern.
All right, so there has been a change that, well, Westgate is anticipating. We're kind of trying to get ahead of this change that is happening to social studies curriculum that is required for graduation for high school students through CDE, the Colorado Department of Ed, and for the state of Colorado. And so the social studies classes have changed up a little bit this year. And so the way that it is now and the way the standards are going to be implemented coming soon, I believe next year, is that 9th grade is going to be required to have 2 semesters of world history. For sophomores, for 10th grade, it doesn't change. They will have U.S. History 2, which is post-Civil War to present U.S. history, and that has remained the same. And then a big change is for juniors. They will be taking now 1 semester of financial literacy and then 1 semester of U.S. government. And the way that it happened before was that the freshmen actually got that. They got economics, a semester of economics, and they got a semester of U.S. government. And now that's kind of flip-flopped. Freshmen are going to get 2 semesters of world history, and juniors are going to get a semester of government and a semester of financial literacy, which, interestingly enough, the past classes were already getting financial literacy kind of embedded in their econ, but now the standards are going to be more aligned with the financial literacy piece. And this makes a lot more sense, I think, for the age group, because for the past few years, we've been teaching econ and financial lit to freshmen, and it was fine. But I think that as students mature a little bit more, they're getting closer to college, they're getting closer to thinking about purchasing a car, thinking about investment. I think that the maturity of the students when it comes to financial literacy is going to be, it's going to be better. There's going to be more student buy-in, more student interest, because freshmen, they're like, sure, Mr. Kern, credit scores. And so now I think like that some of those conversations will like sink in a little bit more, and we'll have more buy-in when it comes to things like, hey, college is maybe a year away. Let's talk about budgeting, and let's talk about what that means and paying bills. And so I think the emphasis on financial literacy is going to be more of the ideas that students are going to be able to take and utilize than like some of the econ theory that is maybe if they were going to go and pursue like a business degree and then they were going to take an econ class in college later, it would be more relevant. But yeah, this so this is the new kind of way that we're doing social studies, and it works. It's going to be good. And then for my elective, we're doing anthropology this year, and that is comprised of 9th, 11th, and 12th grade students. And so, yeah, that's my piece. Any questions on that? No? Okay, cool.
Thanks, Mr. Kern. Then I am Mr. Cuevas. I am the math teacher. This is my 5th year here, and like I said, I'm also between advocacies, which is really exciting, this having completed the 4-year cycle with one group and now in the in-between phase before I get freshman again next year. I also know I'm going to get a lot of siblings of students that just graduated, so I'm also excited just to reconnect with a lot of those families and get to do that work again. As far as the math part, the main contents that I teach are Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. I also teach the elective Mathematical Modeling. Algebra 1, when students come in, a lot of times they have a lot of experience already with the basic arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and how to use those with things like orders of operation. But a big part of Algebra 1 is numbers stop being static. We take a look at the patterns and functions that kind of drive the world around us. So right now we've been doing a lot of equations and function tables, which the students are coming in different places. Some of them have done it a little bit, and it's just a good review as we jump into the heavier stuff. A couple of them, it's a new thing. But next week, when we start getting into graphing, is where we really start looking at the real world scenarios, doing things like how can you model costs over time or something growing or decreasing as you add to it or subtract from it. That'll lead into systems of equations, which usually is the bulk of quarter 2. And we do something then that I call the Dragon's Den project, where systems of equations has to do with where lines intersect. So we do a very real world example where we make small businesses, and those small businesses we kind of model how much money do you have to put into them to get started and to continue making a product, and how much money are you bringing in, and how much time will it take, how much do you have to sell before you hit the break-even point and start profiting. And the kids get up and they present and they talk about their math and they talk about their projects. And that one's just a lot of fun seeing what they come up with. After systems of equations, we move into properties of exponents and polynomials, which is where we're not dealing just with x, but we throw some y into the mix. We do x squared, y cubed. On days where I'm feeling mean, I throw a whole bunch of them together. I think I did 7 m to the 5th, n to the 3rd, o to the -4th last year, just for fun. And I'll admit I get some satisfaction out of the shock in the room first before we learn how to do it. But the kids always handle it really well, and they are very comfortable with variables by the time we get through those lessons. We also do absolute value and quadratics, which are where we start really moving into the heart of algebra, where we're not even just dealing with patterns that make nice lines. We're dealing with things that are like parabolas, which are arcs. So we can start actually talking about things like rockets lifting off, or pendulums or swings going back and forth. We also have an absolute value project where we make graphs of names and words just using a graphing calculator and absolute value functions, and those ones are a lot of fun. Geometry is, in mathematical terms, it is the mathematics of shapes, and we do spend our first couple of weeks doing some review as far as these are the different types of triangles. This is how to find the area of maybe a slightly more complex shape like a trapezoid is what we've been doing recently. But here pretty soon we're going to jump into the bigger parts of geometry, which have to do with parallel and perpendicular lines. We look at slope and triangle centers because triangles have 4 centers for some reason. We get into circles and mapping those. By the end of the year, we'll be using trigonometry to find the angle of the sun to the ground, which is one of my favorite things. We repeat the experiment that I believe it was an Arabic mathematician did when he first discovered that the world was round using math. I had the kids repeat something very similar using Google Maps, and it's kind of fun getting to apply the geometry to the world in that real way, and getting away just from the like length times height is a square, getting into the more complex, like really cool stuff. Though the square thing is useful too, never forget that. Algebra 2 is one of my favorite subjects because the math, you start getting really in deep and seeing some really cool things that the numbers can do. A lot of what we do starting in the science world and the math world regarding careers really kicks off in Algebra 2. So we'll be working with factoring and polynomials again. Those ones are kind of review, but then we get into radicals and rational functions, which is where we start doing the square roots of things and the cube roots of things. Factorials are awesome because they're those numbers with exclamation points after them that just grow and grow and grow forever. Logarithms are kind of the opposite of exponents, and we use a lot of those when we track numbers or have to figure out I don't want to say division because it's more complex than that, but it's like cool division. Logarithms are cool division. Let's go with that. Conjugates, I know those exist in English and Spanish as well, but math conjugates are where we start throwing in radicals and imaginary numbers, which are aptly named. And then we end with probability. And this is a lot of real world probability as far as the algorithms that predict how systems work. We do start with some fun dice rolling and kind of determining if I roll these dice, what is the chance of that? But then we start looking at the bigger, like, full world picture of how luck works, basically. Mathematical modeling is this is the elective that I teach, and we do a lot of review of problem solving strategies. So some of it is the strategies of you get a math problem, here's to approach it. Some of it is the strategies of knowing, like if I just give you a random number, how do you know what numbers might multiply to that? And we also start looking at real world scenarios, taking a closer look at those businesses, or last year we did the math behind something like beauty, which people have different feelings on, yet when they do studies, a lot of people follow the same mathematical ideas. So there's a lot of these really interesting ways that math appear, and we don't fully understand why yet, but we're going to investigate it. Also, this idea came to me today from a student's suggestion. Despite writing real world scenarios there, they also convinced me we should do a unit on the math of superpowers. And I think I'm gonna, because I think that would be really awesome and fun. So I'm still thinking on it. I don't have it planned, but if we have a little extra time, I might throw it in there because the math of Spider-Man swinging sounds amazing, pun intended. Ms. Matthews.
Hard act to follow, Mr. Cuevas. It's a hard act to follow. That is in depth. I am Amanda Matthews. I am a high school English teacher. I teach English 9, 10, and 11. I also teach an elective both semester 1 and semester 2. I used to teach 2 electives until Mr. Brinkley started teaching speech. So he also teaches an English class as well this year. English 9, we use as sort of like an English composition. So introducing students, literary elements, novels, really getting them started with Of Mice and Men, moving on to Lord of the Flies, and just overall looking at how do we do a novel study? How do we write about those things? Especially for those 9th graders going to FRCC, having under their belts the idea of MLA format, and what is that, and how do you write, and how do you write an essay? All of those things that they really, need to know, and all those skills that they're going to gain. Semester 2, we look more at rhetorical analysis, poetry, and then eventually moving towards dystopian literature circles, where in my class, they have book circles. They have an option of one that they would like to read, usually one of 4 or 3, and the top 3 win. And they basically guide themselves through the book. It's at that point in the year that they are now taking ownership of their learning. The expectations have been set, and being, the guider of your own learning is a lot about what I believe in my philosophy of education. It's how it stays fresh and how it stays interesting. English 10 is essentially world literature. So semester 1, medieval through romanticism literary periods with a focus on Gothic literature. And then when we get to postmodern, really diving into, or modern, I should say, Great Gatsby as a novel study, which will take a few weeks. Semester 2, again, which begins in January. We do postmodern. We dive into a little bit of PSAT prep, and then independent book circles. More choice for them there after they have essentially earned their stripes with their first literature circle. English 11 is one of my favorite semesters to teach, which is plays. It's what we're in right now, and the kids love it. I find that plays really bring alive to some kids that don't necessarily jive with English, because the dialogue within the play that's going on, they really understand. It's all right there. I would say there's no reading between the lines, but that's not true. There is, but you know what I mean. We really focus on Socratic seminars. We do that in English 9, English 10 as well, but it becomes a primary mode of assessment in English 11. A Socratic seminar is where the students sit in a circle and share ideas. The idea comes from Socrates, the Greek philosopher, that all the knowledge is within you, and that students are the teachers of themselves. Essentially, again, going back to my philosophy that self-guided learning is the best learning with facilitation and guidance, of course. Semester 2, we move into SAT prep. We do a solid 4 to 6 weeks of SAT prep in junior year as far as English, just because it is, while the SAT has become less and less of a means to get into college, the prep and the preparation of how to take tests is also worthwhile. In addition to stream of consciousness and narrative writing. So stream of consciousness meaning just going and going and going and learning different narratives and memoirs and exploring different narratives of different cultures. As far as literary movements, in the same with every elective, there is some level of college readiness skill building. As intentionally, our program is designed to where the students are going to Front Range concurrently with high school. And so in order to work to get them there, building skills around what they will need to place in the AccuPlacer, to be successful in school, in classes regarding attention and note-taking. And with literary movements specifically, we're looking at 4 literary movements with focusing on postmodern. So you can think of anything from like Japanese art, literature movement, and LGBTQ plus author movement. And really just like how starting with small movements, how those books and authors became mainstream. I think that's Mr. Pettis. Oh, I think that's it for me. You are muted, Mr. Pettis. We couldn't get through one. You can.
I was going to say at the beginning something about how I was afraid I wouldn't remember how to record, because as we get farther and farther away from online learning, I do virtual meetings less and less often. So I feel like this is going amazingly smoothly so far.
Before we go to Mr. Cuevas, I just want to answer the question that was dropped in the chat. It was, are grammar, punctuation usage included in the English curriculum? The answer is yes. So the students all received a binder at the beginning of the year that I gave them and created for them. They have 5 sections of that binder. That binder is grammar, writing, PowerPoints, notes, and quizzes and papers. All of the worksheets that I hand out have hole punches, and they are responsible for putting it in. All of the PowerPoints and lectures that I give them are hole punch, and they are responsible for putting it in. The grammar section is where we start our warm-ups. I have 9th graders and 10th graders twice a week. One day is grammar warm-ups. The second day is writing warm-ups. And then Fridays as well are what I call first chapter Fridays, where we read the first chapter of the book. They all have homework to get a library card by the end of first semester. So that should be something that they are telling you. Just so when we do have we read these books, that they are, if they're curious of them, they have the opportunity to go rent them for themselves. They always try to convince me to read more, but alas, it is the first chapter only. And yes, so the answer is yes. They're built into the warm-ups, and along with, for 9th grade specifically, research writing, and how you break down the structure of a sentence. Of course.
Then Mr. Brinkley did do a recording that we will be uploading with this one, but he is away for now. And so going through his information, he does Spanish 1, Spanish 2, and he is also doing the speech class right now. So Spanish 1, he does some of the units. He goes over our grammar's focus. They go over definite and indefinite articles such as the and they also start looking at conjugation, which is like the voivosvav, almost going through the various suffixes or changes in the words as the verb tense changes. Spanish 2, they're looking at home and travel units, and their big focus is the preterite past tense. So again, building on that conjugation, not just in present, but looking at other times as well. And then they also start throwing in more conversations, doing more projects. And then also it worked, something that I believe he started doing when we were virtual a couple of years ago was he started pushing for Duolingo, because he found it was something that the students got a lot out of and it was easy for them to log quickly into. I also know, as he has talked more about Duolingo, more of us teachers have started using it and comparing notes on how we're doing, and that has been a lot of fun. Then, like I said, he's also doing speech. I believe Ms. Matthews touched on that as well. They do speech games and activities, and they are going to have 3 big speeches: the informative, the persuasive, and talking about a special occasion. As with any of us, if you have any questions for Mr. Brinkley or a teacher directly, feel free to email us at any time as well. Then just a few other things about the high school. Some of these are here on the slideshow. Some of them are ones that I thought of as teachers talked. Ones that are on the slideshow that you might have heard about before are here in the high school. We have homecoming and prom. And even though we're a small school, there's some of those big dances that we really get excited for and that we love having the kids at. Homecoming is here at the school itself. It's high school students, they come in, we hang out, we have fun, we do music. Sometimes we have a game room or food or a couple other happenings at the dance. With homecoming, we also do, in lieu of having enough kids to do a full football game, we do our flick football tournament, where we make our little paper triangles and flick them across the table. And I believe a couple of kids from Miss Schneider's class are the current champions. So she has a small trophy in the room with their names on it right now. So we'll see who the champions are this year, see if they can hold the title again. Prom takes place second half of the year, usually around March or April, and it is always off campus. Historically, we've done Stonebrook Manor. It may be there again, or we may look elsewhere. Student leadership and the teachers will decide on a place and get it out as soon as we know. I had something else about prom. Oh, because we are a small school for prom, we allow freshmen through seniors to attend. It isn't just a junior and senior thing. We do keep it specific to high school. We don't allow them to invite younger students, but they can invite high school students from other schools, providing that they get the permission form filled out. In October or early November, we do Hogwarts, where rather than students traveling around with their advocacy for the day, they travel around with their Hogwarts house. We do the quiz to figure out whether they're Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, or Hufflepuff, but like true Sorting Hat Hogwarts fashion, kids can also decide what house they would like. And we do have Mr. Brinkley as Hagrid, working with the students who did not claim a house, but would like to enjoy the day anyway. Then service learning and service trips. Service learning is a big part of what we do here at Westgate on the whole, and in the high school, we start really getting the opportunity to branch outside of the school. Every Friday, we take some time to work on an ongoing service learning project of some sort, and then every year we also do trips of increasing length and potentially distance from the school. Freshman year, we do something very local, Butterfly Pavilion. I think we've done Food Bank in the past. Something that generally we'll do it a couple days, but we'll just come to school, go do it, come back, go home, next day, come back, do it again. Sophomore year, we are looking at heading to the Grand Lake area in order to have sophomores up in that area doing fire mitigation on the trails or keeping the trails clear and helping rangers another way. Junior year, we will typically go to Taos to build houses. And we'll stay down there. This is Taos, New Mexico, and typically stay down there for roughly a week. So the kids also get this opportunity of learning to cook for themselves and kind of take care of themselves a little bit on this away from school trip. Then senior year, start planning ahead now. Senior year is where we go off campus. Oh man, sorry. That's not quite right. We do go off campus, sometimes as far as Thailand or other countries, but that is one where we start talking about it as early as freshman year because it's something that we want all kids to have an opportunity to do, and it does cost some money to get there. I believe that the rough amount of money that seniors who went had to raise for Thailand, including airfare, was around $4,000. And depending on the location and how far away it is, and also just rising fuel costs for planes, it's generally a good idea to kind of plan on that or a little higher. And that is on students. We will give them ideas and whatnot to work with, but we've had many students take on part-time jobs to raise that money over the years, do things like mow other people's lawns. But even if they can start raising money for that freshman year so that they can divide that cost over 48 months, 4 years, instead of just 12, that helps the kids to get there. And we'll check in with them. We'll give them advice and money raising tips. But the sooner they can start that, the better off they will be. If you would like to hear more about your student-specific potential senior trip, please reach out to their advocate. Then clubs. Currently in the high school, I am running the Dungeons and Dragons Club. I've got 5 students in there, which is about the maximum I can hold. But we've been doing that every Wednesday, and that's a lot of fun. Ms. Matthews is running a club within the rest of the school. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, Amanda?
Sure. It doesn't pertain to high school as much.
It's a club.
It's a club. I do a coloring club for students from kindergarten through 4th grade. If you've ever been inside my room, the chairs prove to always be challenging for new students, although the younger students handle it well. We typically color something and figure out how to color or draw something. And they are forever entertaining because small children always surprise me with what they come up with.
And it's really fun and cute seeing them come down and like see the high school and interact with Miss Matthews because they're just so awestruck by it. And we'd love to see them here in a few years because they seem like a really cool bunch. Then Academic Success Lab, we do this every Friday. Students are in their advocacy rooms and we have them go through a process of get on Infinite Campus. If there's anything you're missing, write it down. If there's anything you got a C or below in, write it down. Also, if you just missed a day and you haven't checked in with the teacher yet, write that down. Then they will go and visit those different teachers in order to get assignments that they missed or tests that they need to do. Or even if there's just something they don't understand, that's the time that they go and ask. So that is an hour every Friday. And a big part of that is we're getting these students really versed in the idea of self-advocacy. Not just that they shouldn't just expect if they miss a day for us to immediately come to them and give them everything they missed, which would be cool, but when you've got about 100 kids, we just can't do that for all of them. So it's helping them get in the habit of keeping track of their grades and their responsibilities. And we give reminders, but it's about really passing that work off to them to better prepare them for the real world. A couple other things that didn't make it to the slide, but I thought of as teachers were talking. Ms. Matthews mentioned the SAT and SAT prep. That is something that we begin pushing hard, particularly second semester of junior year, but even first semester, I know in math, they will have regular warm-ups that are from practice SATs. And Ms. Matthews and I, for the English and math SATs, with much assistance from the other teachers, really start looking at how do you break apart these different problems? How do you, even just the test-taking strategies like the psychology of how can you tell immediately if an answer is wrong or going with your gut choice? All of these little strategies that go into taking the multiple choice test and writing the essay and solving the math problems, those are all things that we really look at junior year. We look at the PSAT prep as well in sophomore year to start getting students ready. And then once we get some of those scores back and can kind of see where the students' strengths and struggles are, we start using that also to prep our SAT lessons just as we get closer to that test. Thought I had one more, maybe it'll come back to me. Got one more slide. Oh, so every Friday we end with soul service. It's this idea that although a big part of what we do is academics, kind of like with service learning, a big part of what we also do is just getting to know the kids, them getting to know each other, having a little bit of time to really focus on the community of Westgate. So the last hour of the week is soul service. There's crafts with Ms. Matthew. Mr. Kern always runs music production. I do indoor games this year. Mr. Brinkley does outdoor games. Ms. Schneider always runs debates, and Ms. Washington is doing the peer mentoring this year. The idea is that the students can go and do something that they enjoy and just get that opportunity to be kids and to be a community and to do something cool and maybe to lose at a game against me or Mr. Brinkley. Just like all these really awesome, fun things that they love doing, we love doing because we enjoy nurturing the soul. Also, although we didn't put it here, the last thing we do on Friday is our high school full circle, where normally in advocacy we'll circle up in the morning and we'll use that time to talk about. It kind of changes a little bit year to year depending on what the students need, but it's also building that community. Maybe we'll run a circle question that's funny or more serious depending on the day, but we'll be in the circle and we'll talk about current events. We'll learn about each other. We'll do something just to continue building our own little group. And then at the end of the day, Friday, we have all 4 grades, seniors included, because they're all, even the FRCC seniors are here Friday afternoon. We will all go out there. We will run one final question, make any final announcements, and then do some handshakes or waves on the way out, just to acknowledge that we're all human beings. We're all in this together. I think that's officially the end of the slideshow, but I just wanted to put out there that I have had the joy of working with this team, and now I've had the joy of working with this team for 4 years now. And with the addition of Matt Crow, things just keep getting better and better, and I can't wait to see what the rest of this year brings. It feels good to be in person. I know I'm happy that we can provide this virtual one because being able to reach parents whose schedules don't allow them to come in is a great opportunity. And I'm excited to see some faces in person too later. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email or leave a voicemail with Natalie at the front desk and she'll get those to us. I haven't had a chance to look at the chat yet, but do we have any questions?
Nope, they were all answered. Unless they have more they'd like to add now.
Also, any teacher, was there anything that I forgot?
No, I would just like to echo too about Academic Success Lab. Just the importance of this hour that we provide. It really is like the hour for students to stay on top of their things. It can also feel very overwhelming, especially if a student has either been absent or does not know is having a hard time in a class. But it is an excellent time. It's almost like an office hour where we're then able to provide extra help and catch them up. And in their advocacies, they fill out what we call an academic success journal, where they are required to check their grades on IC, check off any class they have below a B, and then reflect on what they did well that week, as well as like keeping track of your grades, also knowing your strengths and knowing where you're striving and thriving is also important. And so really, building that into self-reflection and metacognition skills.
Awesome. Well, I think that's everything. As always, feel free to call, feel free to leave a voicemail or an email. If we get emails, we'll reply within 2 work days. And I think that's about everything. If you think of something after this, or if you're viewing the recording and this is happening in the past, feel free to email us if you have any questions. Oh, I see someone's typing. We'll hang in there in a minute. This is so exciting. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, parents, for coming. The communications office will reach out when this is uploaded. Hope you all have an amazing night.